Hello, just want to make a quick video about one of the video series I want to do about space opera, and mainly centering that around the ships and the craft that we see and everybody gets pretty excited about, because epic universes, we get attracted to ships and all the different starfighters and fast attack craft and capital ships and escort vessels, cruisers. There's a lot of questions about space opera, and it can get really confusing. So I'll be coming at it from a military point of view, and there'll also be history and whatnot too. But I'm a fourth generation sailor, and so we have a lot of we have generations of submariners, generations of those of us on surface ships and whatnot, and as mecha designers, lore masters, or world builders, whatever avenue you have an interest in when it comes to ships, it could be any of those three. There's a lot of questions because there's a lot of confusion, and so hopefully this series will help straighten that out, or at least try and make the things that seem complex a little easier to understand. So we'll be getting into things like designing the ships, kind of, these are older pictures and whatnot. We'll get into building the vessels, so there'll definitely be build tutorials involved in it. Also, I wanted to add in things like lore, kind of understanding the different stories behind the ships, why they're called what they're called, and then the technical specifications. And there's a lot of confusion about that because you get all of these different conversations, either from geopolitical, from historical, the technical side, and I'm coming at it from the military side. So how we in the Navy view, not the naval politicians, because they're politicians, whether they're civilian or military. So for those of us who, the way we were taught before we got to fleet, what defines a destroyer? Why is a cruiser? Why are all of the ships in a cruiser line of displacement, called cruisers? And how come? And the reason why every ship is not a capital ship, which you hear that a lot in science fiction, and that's we'll straighten that out. So get that ship shape and course corrected. So for simplicity, basically, we're going to go through all the different ship types. And ship types would be, these would be things you'll all be familiar with, like, what, this is a destroyer, this is a battleship, carriers. And there's going to be a lot of ships, but what helps to break it up is that within the navies, there's three major categories in the real world, and you'll have things like escort, cruiser, capital. And then in science fiction, you get the ships that, go beyond that. They become they have these gigantic planet killers and, or these huge star fortresses and stuff like that. And I'll go about that from my own world building and the universe I'm building. So it definitely helps to break it up, and it gives it organization. And so when you're creating your own world, or if you're just a lore master that's talking about, say, Warhammer 40K, or BattleTech, or Star Wars, Star Trek, it'll help give a lot more organization to it, and hopefully I'll bring some more understanding. We'll also do some battles. Those are always a lot of fun. Hopefully get into some tactics and stuff, because it's always fun to, why do we watch space opera? Well, the ships are cool, and we also want to see things explode. I love a lot of stuff that's like World War II in space, so there's going to be a lot of that, but I'm definitely going to try to design some ships that are more kind of like you have a lot of streamlined ships. Like if you look at the Orville, or you look at Star Trek. Star Trek has some World War II aspects to it, but for the most part, they're pretty streamlined in their weapon systems and whatnot. So, but they, those, we'll try to get into those. But for the most part, you're going to be seeing a lot of like World War II style, or combination of World War II and guided missile age. There's going to be this, really simple stuff of, here's your keel, here's how you build everything onto the ship. One of the things we'll do too is we're going to break down just some very major areas like engineering, the hangar space, your command area, which includes like CIC, Combat Information Center. They have a different name now, but we'll use terminology and then update as we go. Engineering, it's another one. And then you have in anime, I'm including this because you have generally a super gun of some sort, or multiple super guns. And there are things like from Macross with SDF-1 Macross, or SBY-1 like Yamato from Space Battleship Yamato. And they're just these these mega cannons that they, once they unleash, either a one shot another ship, or in the case of Yamato, go out and just destroy an entire task force, or obliterate a fleet. And in some cases, you get like in the Babylon 5, and they'll have a super gun. They'll just vaporize a planet, or Warhammer. If you get too many heretics. And we'll hopefully not get too crazy with detail. Something as artists we can tend to do, but it is fun having these these huge shots of explosions going on and ships being torn apart. But one of the things like with this is when you design your own ships and then you want to draw combat, when you know where all the parts are, you can also involuntarily disassemble the ship, as the British should say, and be able to kind of know where everything's at, or at least get a general picture. And we'll go through that. And then things like superstructure. These are secondary guns here. And then real simple stuff like this, where it's like you just have a ship, you got superstructure, you have where your engine nacelles are, your main guns, secondary guns, some sensors. In this case, we have some lateral launch systems for missiles. Could be torpedoes and whatnot too. Your super guns up here. Hangar decks back here. And yeah, the idea is just to help alleviate confusion, organize the process, and give everybody a framework from which to either world build your own universe and understand why your navies, or why ships are called what they're called, and then be able to take that framework and build your own fleets, and then be able to explain them. Or if you're looking at a universe and you can get an idea what their intention was with the terminology, because a lot of terminology gets misused in science fiction, or even history. And you can look at it and understand what their intention is, hopefully understand what their intention is, and then be able to extract out of that as a lore master, say, okay, they call it this, but this is really what it is in function. And you see that with some other channels. They've got a pretty good grasp on it. So, and, again, this is a big topic. It depends on what era of ships you're talking about, but hopefully we're going to give it a framework and give a decent basis to, again, either design the ships, design fleets, understand the organizational structure, and understand why the hulls, the ships themselves are called what they're called, and why they're categorized the way they are. Or if you're just a lore master, you deep dive into a series or universe in order to talk about the starships. The other is if you're the world builder also. I guess I did mention that. So yeah, mecha design, Loremaster, World Builder. There's fun stuff like, this is really based on modern day. There's a couple of main guns here, some rotating barrels. This is a crazy idea, but it's, hey, if you think it's cool, do it. And there's all sorts of different ways to organize your designs, depending on what you want to do. And, this was just taking the keel and kind of organizing it in different configurations to see what we come up with. But yeah, that is the plan with the series, and hopefully we'll be able to, or I'll be able to help everybody start a journey on coming aboard and designing their own fleets. The initial plan is to start out with all of the lighter ships, and then get into the medium-sized ships. The lighter ships are like your escort vessels. Your medium-sized vessels are your cruisers, and then we'll get into the big boys, the queens of the sea, the capital vessels, so your battleships, carriers, things like that. And the reason why I'm going to start down at the small ships is that you can build, they build off of each other, so which is really cool to see. So, you'll start out, let's say, I'm just going to make something very, very generic here. So, let's say we start out, this is a Corvette, right? Let's say your Corvettes generally aren't very heavily armed. So, let's say you've got, I'm going to keep this very, very simple. Say, you said it has 2 main guns and then 2 missile launchers, right? And then sensors embedded. And then, so this would be let's call this a CC, that'd be a Corvette. And then, let's say a frigate is a little bit bigger and just happens to have more weapon systems on it. So, which frigates are bigger than a Corvette, so, and as you see, the ships start, they're getting, the hulls are getting larger, there's more weapon systems, more sensors, this would be, so an FF. And so, yeah, that's the idea of going from the lighter vessels to the medium-sized vessels, which will be down, your cruisers, light cruiser, heavy cruiser, and then your capital vessels is where you're getting the battle cruisers, battleships, your dreadnoughts, things like that. And we'll also break into what I'm calling the ship rates. So in the Navy, your rates are your job, right? So in the navies that we look at, we'll have things like, current, we have surface ships, we have carriers, that's a completely different job or function, mode of operation, fleet operational, specialty, fleet operations, yeah. Carriers, we have landing. Landing is, you'll see amphibious assault, you'll see, expeditionary forces. They have a lot of different names, which is cool because you can just kind of pick what you want. Landing, submarines, that's another one. You have battle logistics, or auxiliary ships, auxiliary fleets. I spelt that wrong. So, yeah, logistics. Support. Logistics are technically support the auxiliary fleet, but support, that one I'm breaking up because we want to talk about like mobile dry docks, the submarine tenders, kind of these ships that had a real specific niche altogether. And then we'll get into some sci-fi ships and stuff like that. Some new concepts like there's a new concept on the horizon right now where they are considering building a capital-sized vessel that will carry the smallest escort type ships, so sloops and corvettes. And essentially what that ship will do is it'll travel with the task force, your battle group, you know, whatever they end up calling it at the time, or with the fleet into an area of operations, and then those ships can be launched from the well deck within that larger vessel, and then you get a bunch of just local light escort vessels that can carry out a lot of duties and then free up the bigger ships for you know, whatever fleet operations they happen to need in that battle space. But yeah, that's the plan. And sorry, very little drawing, but I plan on starting that tonight after I get off work. I haven't been able to get very many videos out lately. I apologize for that. Partly is my poor timing, so I am going to fix that. But yeah, that is the idea, and really looking forward to getting this done. So this will be part of the Space Opera series. All right, guys, take care and have a good day. Bye.